A team needed a miracle and a favor from another country, and somehow they got both on the same night. Here's what you need to understand. There's the historic breakthrough, the comeback story behind the winning goal, and the math puzzle that almost kept the whole thing from happening at all. This is the story of how South Africa finally cracked open a door they'd been knocking on for 16 years. First, the stakes, because without this part, nothing else makes sense. South Africa hosted the World Cup back in 2010 and never even got out of their own group. 16 years later, they're back, and after 2 matches, they had exactly 1 point to show for it. A loss to Mexico and a draw with Czechia. 1 point. Going into the final group game against South Korea, Bafana, as the team is nicknamed, needed a win, full stop, no draws allowed. And it sounds simple, win and you're through. But it isn't, because South Korea only needed a single point to do the same thing. That's the kind of mismatched motivation that usually ends badly for the underdog. Now comes the part many fans missed while focused on the scoreline. South Korea actually came out swinging instead of parking the bus, which is the slang for playing ultra-defensively to protect a result. Within the first 2 minutes, Korea's captain nearly scored from a header that was cleared right off the goal line. Picture that. Your team needs a miracle win, and the other side almost takes the lead before you've even settled into your seat. South Africa weathered it, created their own chances, and went in level at halftime, but the tension was the kind that makes you want to mute the broadcast just to make it stop. But this is where it gets interesting, and where the personal story behind the eventual hero comes in. The man who broke the deadlock was a winger named Thapelo Maseko, and his path here wasn't smooth at all. He'd helped South Africa win a bronze medal at the Africa Cup of Nations a few years back, only to pick up an injury that wrecked his form, got him dropped to his club's reserve team, and left him writing online about feeling like the fire inside him was fading. He went over 600 days without a single competitive start before a loan move overseas finally gave him a way back. Think about that contrast for a second. A guy who was basically forgotten by his own club, stepping up in the 63rd minute of a World Cup match to score the goal that made history. That's not a script you'd believe in a movie, but football does this constantly, and it's exactly why nobody should write a player off too early.
This is the part that turns a good story into a great one. Maseko's strike was a near-post finish, the kind where the goalkeeper actually guesses the wrong corner because the shot looks like it's going somewhere else entirely. The keeper shifted his weight, expecting the ball to curl far, and instead it dived into the near side of the net. A small detail, a tiny change in body shape from the shooter, and suddenly an entire nation's World Cup hopes flip from heartbreak to history. This part seems small, but it's exactly the kind of split-second decision that decides whether 16 years of waiting ends in celebration or another early flight home. And here's the detail that changes everything about how dramatic this night actually was. South Africa's win wasn't enough on its own. They also needed Mexico to beat Czechia in the other Group A match happening at the same time. Otherwise, the math wouldn't have worked out in their favor. So while Bafana were defending a slim lead against a desperate Korean side, an entire country was also nervously checking a second scoreboard, hoping a completely different match would break their way. Mexico delivered, winning comfortably, and South Africa could finally breathe. Imagine needing your own team to win and a stranger's team to also cooperate on the same night just to advance. That's not just pressure, that's pressure squared. The problem is, this created its own kind of debate among fans watching closely. South Korea only needed a draw and still pushed hard for a win late in the match, which on paper sounds like the smart, aggressive move, but it also opened them up defensively, and that gamble is part of why they ended up going home empty-handed instead of locking in qualification through the safer route. It's the classic football contradiction. Playing it safe gets criticized as cowardly, but playing it aggressive can backfire just as easily. And either way, somebody ends up explaining themselves to furious fans the next morning. The final minutes were their own kind of theater. Deep into stoppage time, Korea pushed one last ball into the box, and South Africa's goalkeeper had to sprint off his line to smother the danger before it turned into a nightmare equalizer. That's the kind of moment that separates first-time qualifiers from teams that just don't have it yet. the ability to defend a lead with your hands shaking and still get it done.
If breakdowns like this make you appreciate just how chaotic group stage math can get, subscribe because the knockout rounds are about to get even messier. South Africa now moves on to face Canada, a matchup nobody would have predicted a few months ago, and they're doing it as a country that just rewrote its own football history. In the end, this wasn't just about one goal or one scoreline. It was about a team that looked finished after 2 games, a player who'd been written off entirely, and a nation that had to win its own match and watch someone else's just to keep dreaming. 16 years of waiting ended in 63 minutes, and Bafana made sure nobody will forget it.